Ed, Edd and Eddy is an all-time classic cartoon that aired on Cartoon Network for nearly 10 years, and it no doubt earned all that screen time. With 6 seasons, 4 specials, and a full-blown movie, it quickly cemented itself into the hearts of viewers around the world. And today, we're going to be covering it from beginning to end. Before we begin, let's get the basics out of the way. The show takes place in the town of Peach Creek and focuses on the group of kids who live in the cul-de-sac. Front and center are the Eds. Ed, with 1 D, Edward, who goes by Double D, as he spells it with 2 Ds, and of course, Eddy. Ed is a bit of a dimwit, but a super nice guy at heart. Double D is a kid genius, who's a bit of a stickler for rules and morals. And Eddy is the ego-filled, cash-obsessed, conniving leader of the 3. Together, they frequently try to come up with ways to con the other kids of the cul-de-sac out of their hard-earned quarters through scams, all so they can get their hands on some delicious jawbreakers. As for other faces you'll find, there's Sarah, Ed's cranky sister, Jimmy, Sarah's best friend and typically soft-hearted guy, Johnny, the neighborhood's imaginative wild card, Plank, a piece of wood with a face and Johnny's best friend, Rolf, the foreigner who essentially runs a farm at his house, Naz, the eye of all the boys' affection, and Kevin, the town jock/bully. There's also 3 others who don't live in the cul-de-sac, but you'll be introduced to them in due time. For now, let's start with episode 1, the Ed Touchables. The first few minutes of the first episode introduces us to the Eds, with Eddy being a mischievous prankster, even to his own friends, Double D being a neat freak, and Ed being, well, Ed. Double D realizes his magnifying glass has been stolen. Ed's sister Sarah realizes her doll is missing. Eddy comes to the conclusion that there's a serial toucher on the loose.
Hey! I know just what to do!
And warns the other neighborhood kids of his presence. The Eds, with money as an incentive of course, decide to track down the serial toucher and start planning their trap. Johnny comes up to Ed, who's wearing a do not touch sign, and touches Ed's hair with Plank, setting off an alarm and starting a chase. The Eds interrogate Johnny and use some downright evil tactics, like threatening to warp Plank in order to coax the truth out of him. However, it turns out that Sarah and Double D actually just misplaced their stuff, and Johnny has just been tormented for nothing. The Eds get their comeuppance by losing the jawbreakers they bought with the kids' money, and the first episode ends. The next episode starts off with the Eds on a nature expedition, led by Double D naturally.
Let us proceed to the forest.
Follow nature, boy.
It's actually a fairly scary affair, as there's a bunch of spooky whispers and creepy eyes following them and saying their names.
Ed and Eddy sitting in a tree. K-I-S-S-I-N-G.
Ed! Get off that thing!
Eventually, the Eds, trapped in mud, are saved by a group of 3 girls and taken back to a trailer park, where they wake up in some weird robes. The girls who saved them are none other than the Canker sisters, May, Marie, and Lee, who've just moved in. While the Cankers are off making dinner for the Eds, Eddy finds drawings of each of the sisters with an Ed, but Eddy thinks they're just weird jokes.
What the? Ah! That's not funny!
The boys pig out on the couch and find some concerning ingredients in their sloppy joes. Anyone ever try to eat a gear? Don't. Making the evening just seem even more off-putting. But hey, at least they get to watch the all-time classic Fishbowl. Eventually, the Eds peeve the Cankers with their lounging, and the Cankers force them to do a ton of chores. Eventually, Eddy loses his patience and briefly yells at the sisters, causing them to cry and run off. The Eds feel bad and try to reconcile, but are told to leave and never come back, which they gladly start to do.
Well, you heard her. Let's go.
This has been quite educational.
Until the Cankers show up at the door with creepy dolls resembling the boys. The whole situation is just so insane that the Eds hightail it out of there. And you know, I can't blame them. The episode ends with the Cankers admitting to each other that they do still indeed love the Eds.
I think I'm in LUV love.
Which certainly can't mean any good for the Eds. In the next episode, it's a super hot day, and the Eds are desperate for some shade.
Shade!
Sun.
Kevin makes fun of the Eds when he finds them exhausted in a sandbox, but lets them know about Naz's sprinkler party, which they aren't invited to. We see Eddy's room for the first time, as he goes through his super secure closet to grab the greatest swimsuit ever, which belonged to Eddy's brother before him, of course. Get ready to hear a lot about Eddy's brother throughout the video, by the way. The swimsuits aren't the best fitting things in the world.
Perhaps they're a tad too confining.
No way, Jose! We're cooking!
But Eddy insists they're gonna be the talk of the party. Well, he's not exactly wrong. The Eds make their entrance to the party and aren't quite the hit they think they'll be. Naz calms the situation down, and we see just how head over heels the guys are for her. Get used to that, too. Rolf also gets his first real moment in this episode alongside Jimmy, as he explains that the pig head he brought to the party is a delicacy from his home country. Well, that's Rolf for ya. The guys try and mingle with the rest of the kids for social cred, and proceed to walk over in the most ridiculous way possible. Look at this. When all else fails, the Eds try doing a stunt, but it ends up causing all of their trunks to rip right off. They make it to the pool before anyone notices, but Naz shows up and asks to join them. Luckily, Eddy was able to make an excuse, but they were still stuck in the pool.
Ed's got 3 nipples like that bad guy in James Bond.
You're funny.
By nighttime, it had gotten cold, but the kids were finally asleep, so they were able to take off, but not before getting attacked by bees. The Eds never catch a break. In the following episode, while the Eds are setting up their next scam selling energy drinks, Double D and Eddy notice Ed's hygiene isn't really up to snuff, to say the least. Ed ruins the scam, and it's decided that Ed needs to be domesticated. After a little makeover, Ed is made cool and set out to hang with the other kids, and he actually wins them over. Eddy capitalizes on Ed's coolness with a show, charging money, of course, but it quickly goes awry when the cankers decide to attend, instantly draining the confidence Ed once had. The show is ruined, and the cankers even steal the money the Eds made, proving themselves to be the worst things since actual canker sores. In a later episode, Eddy is tired of being short, and he hasn't grown an inch since he was 11 years old. Double D wants to help his friend, and so constructs some remote-controlled stilts for Eddy, but emphasizes the remote is very sensitive after Eddy crashes through the ceiling.
Nice catch, Mr. Smarty Boots, nice.
Mega Eddy goes about terrorizing the kids in the cul-de-sac with his height, making it clear his ego is just as tall as himself. Everything seems to be working out nice for Eddy until, guess who? The Canker sisters show up and ruin his boots, grabbing the remote and pressing the button until the device is busted. You know, Eddy kinda deserved it that time though. The next episode is an all-time great in my humble opinion. The Eds find a poster for an R-rated movie.
Visitors in the void. No escape. Huh?
And considering they're still just kids, they come up with what the plot could be themselves. Ed starts rambling off a classic sci-fi B-movie plot until they end up in a junkyard that kinda looks like a distant robot planet. Ed says the first thing space outlaws do in situations like this is to find shelter, and Eddy finds just the spot, an abandoned van with a fiery paint job, complete with shag carpeting, a waterbed, and a horn that plays La Cucaracha.
Boys, welcome to Central Command.
For the rest of the series, this would be the Eds' secret hideout. The Eds later get even more into their fictional world, but find the cankers harassing Kevin of all people. Man, what do you call the bully of the school bully? Ed courageously goes in to save him, and due to him being dressed like a lunatic, actually scares off the cankers. Double D builds a prototype for a rocket, but Eddy doesn't have patience, and has himself fired off only to inevitably come crashing down.
Hey, Double D, the rocket needs work.
Robots finally attack the Eds, and the boys start an all-out assault. It turns out their imaginations had gotten the better of them though, as it was just Jimmy and Sarah coming to get Ed for dinner. Double D and Eddy have to drag Ed home though, as he still thinks he's a space outlaw. That's Ed for ya. In the very next episode, another staple location of the Eds is established, this time being their treehouse. They find the perfect spot, gather wood, and get to building. They finish and voila, Club Ed is born. The Eds use their clubhouse as an actual club and charge members to get in, suckering them with club events that'll never happen, like yacht racing. The Eds return to their clubhouse only to realize that the cankers have taken over. Will they ever leave the Eds alone? A water balloon war ensues, and Double D proves himself to be the smoothest man on the planet, dodging the balloons like they're nothing. Unfortunately, the Eds didn't win the war, and Eddy is catapulted into the sky to end the episode.
Whoops, sorry about that, Eddie.
Nice shot, Ed.
You know, I'm sure someday the Eds will get their payback, but for now, they're on a bit of a losing streak, don't you think? In a later episode, Sarah is revealed to have a crush on Double D after he inadvertently gives her a flower. For a brief while she follows him around lovingly, even ditching Jimmy just for the mere presence of our man Edward.
Come out of there, silly. I'm quite comfortable, thank you.
Though, to say the least, he's not interested. The situation ends up distracting from the Ed scam at hand, and so Eddy and Ed decide to work with a disgruntled Jimmy to get Sarah off of Double D's back. Oddly, all they had to do was bring the two in front of each other, and they instantly got right back to their constant playdates. Though she never did quite get over Double D here, did she? Now, of course, most cartoons have a wrestling episode, and Ed, Edd and Eddy is no exception. However, this episode also has the distinction of being the very first to introduce Chunky Puffs, the cul-de-sac cereal of choice, especially for Ed. That said, in this episode, after feeling embarrassed for Double D and his lack of strength and athleticism, Eddy and Ed turn to wrestling as the ultimate way to turn Double D into the muscly machine they know he can be. In his first match, Double D struggles to beat Plank of all people, but is truly put to the test when the Cankers show up. A tag team match is set up between the Eds and Cankers, and to say the Eds didn't stand a chance would be an understatement. And rightfully so, the Eds' wrestling careers are over after that. In a later episode, it's shown that Kevin's dad has a job at the Jawbreaker factory and has a stash of the beloved candies in his garage. The problem for the Eds is he isn't going to share with them, and the garage door isn't budging. The Eds try to learn more about Kevin to be his friend, but despite their best efforts, Kevin still wants nothing to do with them. The episode ends with a full-on heist attempt by the Eds, but their plan goes down the drain pretty quickly. Get it?
Hey, Kev, let me help you with that.
Eddy?
In the episode Keeping Up with the Eds, we see that Double D's parents communicate with him through a plethora of sticky notes, mostly telling him what chores to do. Also, yeah, every episode title incorporates Ed in some ridiculous way. Just thought you all might want to know. Other than the sticky note factoid, this episode is just typical Ed nonsense, with them using Rolf's goat, Victor, to mow Double D's lawn. Believe it or not, the situation doesn't exactly pan out perfectly for the Eds. Who'd have guessed? In another episode, the Urban Rangers make their debut appearance, a Boy Scout-like troop of kids consisting of Jimmy, Johnny, Plank, and Rolf. Rolf is the head of the troop and tests the Eds to make sure they're worthy. The Eds, of course, just want to join because they think the uniform is cool. Needless to say, the Eds aren't quite up to snuff for the Urban Rangers. And don't earn the single badge to get their uniforms. Well, I mean, I don't really think they're missing out on much. Their symbol is literally the loser L. In Season 2, Episode 1, the Eds debut one of their all-time greatest scams, if you could even call it that. While rummaging through the junkyard once again, the Eds find a box of turkey basters, but decide to market them as Canadian squirt guns to the kids in the cul-de-sac. The squirt guns are one of the Eds' actual big success stories.
All at an insignificant price of 50 cents. We'll also include a free sock holster.
With the neighborhood kids all paying to have their very own Canadian commodity. Now, of course, the Cankers do show up, steal their money, and challenge the Eds to a Western-style shootout.
Oh, I feel it. I feel the adrenaline in it, baby!
And of course, they do win. But you know what? I think it's officially alright to say that the Eds are better entrepreneurs than they seem. In Knock Knock, Who's Ed?, the gang tries to find a working TV to catch an 8-hour monster movie marathon. But before that, they get Ed stuck in a giant cube of Jell-O. What was even the plan with that one? The Eds go to Rolf's house to catch the marathon, but get nearly bored to death by his stories of his home country.
The sea cucumber gurgled loudly like my father after eating cabbage. Yes, one moment.
I tell you,
There's no telling what I'll do if I hear any more of that story.
and so sneak to the living room while he thinks they're in the bathroom. Rolf's TV is pretty outdated and small, and the movies are even in black and white.
Even from this distance, the production values look remarkably cheap.
But Ed's undying love for the films keeps him glued to the screen. Eddy and Ed criticize the Cyclops movie and its cheap effects, and Ed isn't happy.
Lighten up, Lumpy. I just shut up! Sit down!
He sits them down along with Rolf and intimidates them into watching all 8 hours of B-flick horror. He has a pretty scary obsession with these movies, but I'm sure that won't come back to bite anyone, right? In the next episode, the Eds break reality. No, for real. They just wreck the world. The backgrounds, the sun, the floor, it all is dissected and accidentally destroyed by the Eds. Jimmy has his entire outline stolen.
This is fun! Hello.
Big Ed, scrub my feet!
Ed saws a hole into existence which Eddy falls infinitely through. And well, that is when things get weird. The world goes to complete incomprehensible shambles, complete with a mouthless Sarah, a Nas crocodile thing, and of course, the iconic three-headed Rolf. This episode is insane, but thankfully, it's basically just a dream.
Baby sister! Take your mouth off again!
Big Ed has lost his marbles?
And the Eds snap back to reality by the end of the episode. In another episode, the Eds find a haunted house, and thanks to a jawbreaker-infused bet made with Kevin, they're forced to go in.
What are we waiting for?
Eddy, don't you see through Kevin's cheap attempt to get us to go in that filthy house?
The doorknob falls off,
Hit the road.
meaning the Eds are stuck having to find a way out through the spooky shambles. Eddy gets his finger stuck in what's left of the doorknob frame, and when the guys try and free him, they're accidentally launched deeper into the ghostly abode. The Eds are split up through some well-placed traps, with Double D being baited away with books, Ed with a box of Chunky Puffs, and Eddy with mirrors showing himself. He's not afraid to be full of himself, I'll give him that. Eventually, their traps lead them back to a train of some kind, which takes them through what seems to be a tunnel of love. The Eds see dolls of themselves enacting the scariest idea of all:
Who's that good-looking guy?
Get some glasses, Ed.
suburban life. And if you look closely, you can even see the Ed doll watching Fishbowl 2, the same cruddy paper cutout fish movie from the season 1 episode Nag to Ed. Also, if you're extra observant, these dolls used in the ride are actually from that same episode and belong to the Cankers. Can you guess where this is going? The Eds are towed right up to the Cankers, who've tricked the boys into a wedding. The Cankers' plan was super well thought out too, with the Double D and Ed getting their rings from May and Marie. As for Eddy, he's been wearing his ring the whole time. The Eds, stripped naked from the ride somehow, can't escape, and so are forcefully hitched. Maybe they can file for divorce. Season 3 starts off with one of the funniest episodes in the series. The Eds want to be nice to a homesick Rolf, and so trick him into thinking he's sent back to his home country for a day by making him pass out after smelling a magical wish-granting shoe.
Oh, great shoe, grant Rolf his wish and take Rolf to his home.
This show is amazing. Rolf wakes up to a shoddily made replica of his beloved old country, but he buys the false reality and proudly proclaims that the son of a shepherd has returned.
The water is fouled with infestation. My wish has been granted.
The Eds get a bit more immersed into Rolf's culture to keep the facade going, playing his old village song called That's My Horse. Oh, and don't you worry, it's a banger, literally.
That's my horse.
I like this song.
My horse! My horse!
Eventually, through Johnny running in and blowing the realism, Rolf figures it out, and to punish them, he plays the village song once more, and has Ed go barbaric on Eddy and Double D. Unbeknownst to him, of course, he thinks it's all just fun and games. The next episode, Mama's Little Ed, sees Eddy and Ed forging sticky notes from Double D's parents to get him to do whatever they want.
Dear Edward, insert broom lint into your belly button. Love, Mom.
Double D is tricked into doing things that just get worse and worse, with him frequently getting hurt through no fault of his own.
You must be punished.
What is that, Rolf?
The hat of discipline. Do you live in a cave? All is forgiven.
Thank you, Rolf.
Eventually, Double D figures out what's going on, and so to make it up to him, Eddy lets him spend the night at his place and does whatever he says, including rubbing his feet before bed. Well, Eddy got what he deserved. In a later episode, the Eds stumble across Sarah's diary after they accidentally bust into her room. They flee the scene, and despite Double D's resistance, Eddy opens it up and reads a bit of it.
Listen to this! Dear Diary, Double D is so cute. Last night I dreamed that he gave me a horsey. A horsey!
With the secret coming out that Sarah still has a crush on Double D. Eventually, Sarah finds the Eds with her diary and she isn't happy. I'll let you figure out the rest. In the episode, Oh, Ed 11, we learn a little more about Eddy's older brother and get to see his hidden room.
Come on in, boys. Check it out.
Your brother's room is cool, Eddy!
Eddy touts his brother as the coolest and shows off every oddity the room has to offer, including a full-on car. Ed breaks a trophy in the room, which contains a treasure map, and the gang sets out to find it.
There you go, miss. That's me, Walter Sobchak, a construction worker.
Good enough for me.
But ultimately, and inexplicably, it just leads right to a suitcase right beneath the cankers. Eddy's brother seems to be a little odd, to say the least.
I'm so confused!
I think your brother's a wizard pulling your leg, Eddy.
Oh, also, the cankers are watching everyone's favorite movie, Fishbowl 2. Who'd have guessed? We learn even more about Eddy's brother in the episode, Ed Pass It On, when Eddy starts a fake rumor that he's coming back to town. Apparently, there's a whole lot of stories about the brother, and they strike fear into people as big as Kevin. Eventually, Eddy's brother, sick of all the rumors spreading about him, shows up to confront Eddy, who instantly grovels and goes to fetch him ice cream.
Chocolate sauce, marshmallows, lots of nuts.
Hey, wait a minute! What happened to that lactose thing you...
See this?
But in reality, it was actually just Sarah and Jimmy pretending to try and get back at Eddy, who they figured was lying the whole time. Let it be known, Sarah is braver than Kevin, I guess. Huh. In another classic episode, Ed's love for both Chunky Puffs and monster movies fuse into something terrifying. To drum up some customers, Eddy and Double D make a monster suit for Ed so he can pretend to be like the creatures from his movies. However, he gets a little too invested in his role, attacking Eddy and breaking free from Double D's garage to hunt for prey in the neighborhood. Ed slowly captures the cul-de-sac kids one by one, starting with Johnny and Kevin. We then finally see what the full suit looks like, and well, Ed pulls the suit off quite nicely, honestly. He looks like a monster. The survivors head over to the clubhouse, making its first appearance since the Eds built it all the way back in season 1. That's some neat continuity, I think. Double D volunteers to sacrifice himself to try and get Ed to calm down, and Nas even kisses him before he heads down as a thank you. But Ed destroys the treehouse and catches Nas and Rolf before Double D can perform his act of heroism. It's shown Ed has been gluing his victims to his wall using pre-chewed Chunky Puffs. Gross. Double D and Eddy, who's honestly having the time of his life just laughing at the situation, go in to save the kids, and Eddy tries to make the kids pay 50 cents to be saved. Classic Eddy. Luckily, Ed shows up and puts things into perspective for the little sleazeball, scaring him into Double D's arms. Sarah saves the day by taking Ed's mask off, but ends up getting stuck to the wall anyways. And the Eds go hide before any of the kids can get their hands on them for what Monster Ed did to them. Later on in the episode, A Twist of Ed, the Eds are officially tired of dealing with the cankers.
Now, what could a lipstick dispenser be doing in my yard? Oh my.
Hiya, Dreamboat!
They all meet up in the same van they found back in season 1, episode Dawn of the Eds, still with the shag carpeting and waterbed, mind you, and come up with a counter to the cankers' harassment. Double D's plan is to use reverse psychology, acting like they actually love the cankers to throw them off, and it turns out the plan works. Ed and Double D use the reverse psychology plan and execute it perfectly.
See? I love you. A poet I am.
These guys are creeping me out! Let's hide in our room!
But Eddy can't get past his nerves around the cankers, causing the girls to eventually see through the plan. Whoops.
Uh-oh, looks like we're trapped. Just prisoners of love.
The girls get the last laugh and perhaps the most frustratingly close the Eds have gotten to a win yet, someday. A few episodes later, we're introduced to the cul-de-sac's local superhero, Melonhead. After scamming some of the neighborhood kids with a thingamajig by instead just selling them a bunch of junk, Melonhead showed up to reclaim the money and return it to the kids, then revealing himself to be Johnny and Plank. By the way, Plank is also a superhero named Splinter. Go figure. In the finale episode of Season 4, we see what the cul-de-sac looks like when they're all senior citizens. Eddy wakes up from a coma to find himself a wrinkly old man and is in disbelief, needing a cane to get anywhere as well. Ed and Double D still hang out with Eddy and play cribbage with him, both of whom have some memory and hearing issues. Johnny is shown to still be with Plank, both of whom have also aged a lot, alongside Nas, who now feeds pigeons, like an old lady. Jimmy and Sarah still play together, but rather than jumping rope, as it seems, they're knitting. Again, just like old people. Jimmy even knits Sarah a bedpan, which, I mean, if you know what that is, you know how gross it is. I'll be totally blunt too. Rolf has just completely lost his mind, and is speaking complete nonsense.
Rolf's tractor is not for sale! You fool!
Kevin shows up too, but has ditched his trademark bike for a mobility scooter, but is still a bully. After trying to eat a jawbreaker to regain his youth, Eddy wakes up from a coma from when he's younger to reveal this was all a coma dream itself. But right before he can eat a jawbreaker to celebrate, he wakes up again as his old self, and it's shown he's actually still old. What is happening? Season 5 marked a change in the series formula, as for the first time, we see the cul-de-sac going to school. The episode, Out with the Old, In with the Ed, has Eddy trying to make summer vacation last forever on its final day. Reality crashes down hard the next morning, though, as the Eds are forced to head up the steps to Peach Creek Junior High. Double D and Ed seem alright with things, until they find out they're in different homerooms, and then the panic sets in. Double D says they can file a form to be moved back together in 3 to 4 weeks. They sign up, and are moved to room 212, but when they show up, they realize that somehow, the cankers are their new homeroom teachers. They're probably gonna want to go back to the old rooms. Sticking with the school theme, the episode Mission Ed Possible sees Double D being tasked with delivering Eddy and Ed's bad report cards to their parents. Eddy isn't too happy with this. After trying to sneak out of the school unnoticed by his friends with the help of Rolf, Ed and Eddy find Double D escaping, and a chase begins. Double D steals Kevin's bike, and the other Eds run him over afterwards. But I'm sure Kevin will be very forgiving of the guys, right? Oh, and then he gets hit again, and his bike is broken. I'm telling ya, there's no way this won't end well. Double D makes it to Eddy's house to deliver the cards, but Eddy got there first and scrambles through Double D's backpack. But there's no report cards. Turns out, Rolf delivered the report cards after Double D met up with him earlier, and helped get him an Urban Ranger patch. We actually see Eddy and Ed's parents for a brief moment, presumably dragging each boy to a scolding they aren't gonna forget.
Uh-oh. No Andy for Ed! Mommy! No Andy for Ed!
Oh, and Kevin shows back up, and he's not accepting apologies. The next episode, Every Which Way But Ed, is full of flashbacks that go over some history that were never quite explained before this point. Ever wonder why Plank has a chip in his head? Turns out that happened while Johnny was helping Rolf with his farm work one day, as Plank was launched right into the son of a shepherd's mouth. We can also see that Kevin and Johnny used to have hair, and Nas used to be a bit bigger to say the least. We see Rolf's beloved old country when he was younger too. And yeah, I mean that about checks out for what I'd imagine. To end the episode, we learn how the Eds first met too, with Double D having just moved into the neighborhood.
My name is Ed also, but with 2 D's.
Gee, ain't that a coinky-dink? We all have the same name!
And Eddy and Ed still doing scams, even in diapers. You know, some things never change, it seems. In the episode Smile for the Ed, it's picture day, and Eddy's mom says that to get his brother's room, all he has to do is have one good picture. Sounds simple enough, but Kevin jumps in at the last second and ruins it, causing Eddy to look like this.
If that photo ever gets out for my mom to see, I can kiss my brother's room goodbye! I bet you there's more!
Double D in the photography club offers to take Eddy's picture with the last bit of film they have. But again, Kevin comes in and ruins it. So no big boy room for Eddy, it seems. Kevin really is a jerk, huh? In the Valentine special of this season, we see weird Cupid versions of Sarah and Jimmy going around and creating weird romance combinations between the kids of Peach Creek Junior High. After Ed hurts May Canker's feelings by running over her after she hands him a Valentine, Double D hands her a Valentine to try and make her feel better, causing her to get struck by Cupid, literally and figuratively. Rolf senses something is up though, and he's not amused. Meanwhile, Double D is taken aback by May's new obsession with him.
Pink ballet!
Oh, way to go, numbskull! You ruined my shirt!
Until she criticizes Ed for blowing something up in a science experiment using meticulous chemical details. Apparently, she makes her own deodorant, so that's something. Needless to say, Double D is impressed, and then shot by Cupid's arrow, and the lovey-dovey shenanigans begin. Double D gets a love letter from May and fawns over it, putting it in his hat even after Eddy tosses it in the garbage. Marie finds Double D flirting with May, and gets pretty mad too, as typically, she's the canker who obsesses over him. The remaining Eds and Cankers catch on to what's happening, and each think the other trio is behind it. This eventually leads to a full-on food fight, until Double D and May come in and confirm that they're truly in love. No scam indeed. When each side holds back their love-bound friend, the Cupids get a bit antsy and start launching arrows left and right. Kevin and Lee Canker fall for each other. Naz and Johnny are grouped up. Ed dances with a sandwich, and Eddy stares lovingly at Plank. Rolf, the only one who wasn't struck by an arrow, squeezes lemons into his eyes to see the Cupids. Don't question it.
Peekaboo, Rolf sees you!
And squashes them with a wet mop, and then proceeds to splash all the love-bound students with the remaining mop water to break their minds free from the Cupid spell. Rolf is really a legend for this one, I won't lie.
The harsh realities of their miserable lives have been restored! Thank you!
However, even after all is said and done, the episode ends with Double D pulling May's love note from his hat and continuing to fawn over it. So, hey, I guess he might really have a crush on her after all. To cap the series off, Ed, Edd and Eddy's Big Picture Show hit Cartoon Network in 2009, and well, it's kinda amazing. The movie starts with the Eds on the run, having enacted the most diabolical scam they ever had. The spooky part is, we never know what they all did.
What do we do, Eddy? What do we do?
What happened to Socket?
Double D and Ed book it to Eddy's house, who's also packing to flee from home. When the neighborhood kids sound like they're near, the Eds hide in Eddy's brother's room. The kids find them, but thankfully they find an emergency peanut.
This away, guys! Look!
In case of movie break glass.
Bingo! My bro's always prepared.
Which turns out to hold a key to the car stashed in the room. They bust through the wall of the house to escape the kids. We finally see what the neighborhood kids look like as a result of the Ed scam, and it ain't pretty. Rolf has bite marks taken out of him. Naz is half-shaven and stuck in a box. Kevin looks like he survived an explosion. And Johnny has a bear trap on his head. I don't know what happened, but there's no way it could have been good. When the key doesn't work, Ed manages to stick his feet through the bottom of the car and they manage to escape the house. That said, they're still on the run from the bloodthirsty kids. The gang gets to the dump, but even still, the kids are hot on their tail, with Rolf on his pig, Naz in skates, Kevin on his bike, and Johnny running like Usain Bolt, I guess.
Eddy, the door left me!
I will assist you with the envoy logging, Kevin!
When all hope seems lost, Double D grabs onto a merry-go-round, flinging the kids in different directions and the Eds into the heavens. The kids split up to find the Eds, with Naz and Kevin pairing up, Johnny and Plank sneaking away to do something suspicious, and Rolf heading out with his pig, Wilfred. Jimmy and Sarah also decide to trail along in their own pack, hoping to see the beatdown of the Eds. Meanwhile, the Eds crash their car into a boulder, and it explodes on impact. As a last-ditch escape, Eddy decides to take the gang to his big brother's place, and so the trio officially ditches Peach Creek.
I drew a picture for your brother, Eddy. Think you'll like it.
Hey, Sockhead, where'd you go?
On their way there, Eddy assures the gang that Eddy's brother has a special connection with himself, and that he'll for sure take care of the three. However, when Eddy reveals he doesn't know where he lives, Double D gets really concerned. Double D figures that considering most of the time anything having to do with Eddy's brother is involved, there's a prank that he could work at a rival town's gag toy factory. The Eds arrive at the factory, but it's completely abandoned, with nobody in sight, let alone Eddy's brother.
Oh, Ed! Gum?
Lucky me!
After Ed and Eddy hand him a gag jar of jelly beans, Double D, alongside a bunch of fake snakes, are launched off into the sky. He's tracked down by his friends, but he's stuck dangling at the top of a waterfall, which they safely get him down from.
There was something, Ed! Something big!
Eddy also speaks about how his brother is a whaler, supposedly, so Double D suggests they look for the sea by following a river. Double D makes a boat to travel down the river, but while explaining how it works to Eddy, Ed makes him lose his hat for the very first time. Though sadly, every shot where we could see what's actually under the hat is covered. The gang hops in the duck boat and set off to sea. The boat crashes in a swamp, and Eddy and Ed, again pranking Double D, pretend to drown in quicksand.
Why did you listen to me? This is all my fault. I should have never let you leave the cul-de-sac.
When they finally reveal it was a prank, Double D gets fed up with the way he's been treated throughout the entire movie and series itself, and decides to split off from the group. For the first time in the whole series, Eddy actually apologizes for his wrongs, and is able to sway Double D back to the group. Eventually, the Eds find a whale-shaped trailer at an amusement park, and figure out that it has to be Eddy's brother's place. However, right before the Eds knock on his door, the cankers pull them to the side and reveal they caught all the kids after them to prove their love. The kids, tied up, still threaten Eddy, and so he knocks on his brother's door and tells him that they're out to give Ed, Double D, and himself a beating. He steps out and instantly scares the cul-de-sac kids half to death. Oh, and we also see an adult in the series for the first time.
Still the troublemaking Eddy, I see. Stop it, bro!
I smell my fingers after I eat cheese.
He says he'll help the Eds out, but wants to play a game of Uncle for old time's sake, which, if you know anything about that game, means no good.
Uncle! Uncle!
Say what?
Uncle! Uncle! Uncle!
Eddy is totally beaten down by his brother.
Give it up! I thought you wanted to hang with your hero. I do, bro, I do!
Causing the cankers to get mad, of course. But surprisingly, even the cul-de-sac kids feel awful for the guy. Double D tries to stand up to him, but the brother slams Eddy directly into him, showing just how messed up this guy really is. Thanks to the neighborhood kids distracting him and Ed's quick thinking, I know, crazy, Ed thinking, Eddy's brother is knocked out cold.
I made it all up, Double D. Everything about my brother was a lie. I just made things up so people would like me, think I was cool.
The kids celebrate, and the Eds are finally seen as friends.
Let Rolf rob the piece of victory, Eddy!
I'm so glad you're okay, dude.
Nas even kisses Eddy for his bravery, and Kevin embraces Eddy as well. Who would have ever thought that would happen? Suddenly, though, a bus arrives, and out comes Captain Melonhead and Splinter, who instantly take down the Eds, enacting justice. Or so they think. As the kids then beat Johnny up for hurting their new friends. Kevin decides to throw a party at his house too, and says the jawbreakers are on him. And finally for the Eds, things have gone right for them, and all it took was
130 episodes, 4 specials, and a movie, Eddy.
Let's sing a song!
And that's a wrap on Ed, Ed, and Eddy. Hope you all enjoyed. Let me know what shows you want us to cover next. Make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.